All right, so the setup is a bit different today. We're not doing a presentation anymore because those take way too long to do. And I think this will be more interactive this way too, because you can kind of follow along. And I've seen other people do it. So, anyways, this is the Doom Slayer stack that I made myself. And this is going to be my first idea that I'm bringing on to this channel, and something that I personally thought about that I want to share. And jumping right into it, what is this? A stack. It's going to be endocrine overclocking, which, if you don't know that term, is just hormone overclocking. So, on this channel, we're going to get to know these terms and use them so we can sound smarter. Okay, so endocrine overclocking. And now, why are we doing this? It's just a bit of backstory. I feel like for a lot of guys, a lot of guys try to optimize these two hormones, testosterone and human growth hormone, right? If you've been around and you don't live under a rock, you definitely know what these two are. Whether it's for building muscle, whether it's for bone mass, whatever your goal is, it's probably going to involve these two hormones. And so the reason why I came up with this was because, well, let's look, how do people usually say to increase these? They have these natural methods, like raw foods, avoiding seed oils, sprinting, bullshit natural testosterone boosters that don't work at all. And that's pretty much all there is there's just that, just follow those steps and you'll optimize it, and you'll increase growth hormone or testosterone by 1,000%, and shit like that. Or there's those hardcore people who will just inject the hormone itself. And here's the thing, is this is going to give, in the grand scheme of things, this will give the worst results and this will give the best results. But, this has the most side effects. You're suppressing your endogenous endocrine system, meaning you're suppressing your actual hormonal systems in your body. You're fucking them up. And then also whatever side effects of super physiological levels of that hormone will happen. So, super physiological levels, that just means a level that's higher than biologically intended. So those bodybuilders with 20,000 nanograms per deciliter of testosterone, that's super physiological. And, that's going to come with side effects. And this idea kind of got brought to me with the whole overclocking thing. Was another topic that I like to talk about, nootropics, right? Is looking at nootropics for stimulants. Is on one side, I highlighted caffeine because that's your healthy nootropic. You use caffeine, that's your natural method. And then nicotine can be too, but then you go into stuff your amphetamines and methylphenidates. And those are considered, trading future energy for current energy. Much like the steroids, these are gonna work the best, but they're gonna have the most side effects. And then something like caffeine is gonna work the worst, but be the healthiest. But then there's this middle ground with this, with the nootropics for stimulants, which is those nootropics like Cimac, Bromantane, and maybe the paracetams, just as examples. And that's kind of the middle ground, where it's safer, it's less neurotoxic, maybe not neurotoxic, and then there's long-term benefits. Like with Bromantane, you're increasing and overclocking the amount of dopamine that your brain is producing. So that's where the overclocking thing comes in. So now let's get into endocrine overclocking. I thought, why can't there be a middle ground when it comes to your endocrine system and hormones? And I think that there actually can be, and that's what I'm discussing in this video. And so this is a very basic and simple stack I made, and I'll explain how it's endocrine overclocking and what the stack is. I'm going to go over that in this video, and that's pretty much all this video is going to be about. And here it is. It's MK677, Proviron, and Enclomiphene. And so before anybody says anything, I know that MK677 could be replaced with any growth hormone peptide, and enclomiphene could be replaced with like HCG or HMG, and it would be better. But just for the sake of the video, I just made it an all oral only stack. Very easy, simple, and just for the sake of explanation. So let's start with MK677. It's a ghrelin mimetic, which ghrelin is your hunger hormone. And ghrelin works in a way where it reaches your hypothalamus and pituitary. And when you have a high level of ghrelin, you get a growth hormone release. So MK677 mimics ghrelin, causing a growth hormone release, which is going to lead to increased growth hormone, increased IGF-1, increased recovery, technically increased muscle mass, but I don't like to bank on that, and it's not going to be significant for muscle mass. And then improvements in hair, skin, and nails. And here's your side effects: increased water retention, decreased insulin sensitivity, that's mainly over long use, lethargy, and then increased hunger. But I mean, that could also be a benefit based on your situation. Now, Proviron. Proviron is a DHT, dihydrotestosterone derivative steroid. But it's very unique, and it's not like any other steroid that's really out there. Like, I have not seen anything else like it. This is going to give you increased libido, lower sex hormone binding globulin, which we'll go over later, which is going to mean higher free testosterone. Again, I'll comment on that later. No aromatization, since it's a DHT derivative, so no estrogen conversion, so you're not going to have estrogenic side effects. Increased energy, and here's why it's added and why I think, you can replace these two, but you can't replace Proviron. I think Proviron in this stack is like the non-negotiable, because it's very minimally suppressive, and there's no 17A alkylation, meaning liver toxicity is significantly less. And I'll link a study on showing misterolone versus like methyltestosterone in treating patients. But the trade-off with this is low anabolic rating, high androgenic rating, which could also be a benefit depending on your goals, and then minimally suppressive. That's also a negative, because it will be still suppressive but super minimally. Low anabolic rating, I just want to highlight on that because Proviron is not going to be our main muscle builder. Enclomiphene actually is. The increase in testosterone and the overclocking of testosterone is actually going to be, and I'll explain that. So enclomiphene is a selective estrogen receptor modulator, or a SERM, and it binds to estrogen receptors in the hypothalamus and pituitary, pretty much messing with what your body has called the negative feedback loop, which is how your body controls testosterone production. So your hypothalamus releases gonadotropin-releasing hormone, which goes to the anterior pituitary, which releases luteinizing hormone, and follicle-stimulating hormone, which goes to the testes, which releases testosterone, which converts via the aromatase enzyme into estrogen, and then estrogen goes back up to your pituitary and hypothalamus. You don't have to know what any of that means, just pretty much your brain chooses to release all these hormones, aka that lead to testosterone. Your testosterone release is controlled by your estrogen, because your body has this ratio of homeostasis, and it's controlled via this negative feedback loop. So your testosterone level is in a ratio with your estrogen level, and if you raise your estrogen, you're going to produce less testosterone. If you lower your estrogen, you're going to lead to increased testosterone. And enclomiphene messes with this negative feedback loop, causing the more favorable outcome of higher testosterone production. So increased testosterone production, increased sperm production, and increased muscle mass. But again, on its own, I'd be careful about this increased muscle mass. And I'll talk more about that later when we get down here. But it pretty much, I'm worried about that because of this. It raises SHBG, raises estrogen, and then has a side effect of actually lowering IGF-1. But the good thing is we're overclocking our endocrine system. We're increasing our own release of human growth hormone and increasing our own production of testosterone. internally, endogenously. So now, what's this whole thing with sex hormone binding globulin? Sex hormone binding globulin binds to sex hormones such as testosterone in order to actually carry them to tissues. So it's like a carrier, a transporter protein for testosterone. But the problem is when testosterone's bound to a SHBG, it's not able to actually be effective. It's not active. So if this is too high, your testosterone is pretty much more useless in your body. The level of free testosterone you have is actually, free testosterone is not bound to SHBG, and free testosterone is ready and effective to bind to muscle tissues to actually cause effects. So we want to increase levels of free testosterone, and enclomiphene on its own will raise SHBG and estrogen in conjunction to the testosterone increase, because your body has the ratio. But that's why we have Proviron, and that's why it's a non-negotiable, because it has a very high binding affinity to SHBG, meaning it will bind to SHBG and lower SHBG, increasing free testosterone. So that's why Proviron is there. Proviron is not the main muscle builder. It's there to give you some androgenic effects if you need them, and it's there to mainly lower SHBG and also control estrogen. I don't know the full science behind why Proviron controls estrogen. I will make a video on it, but pretty much it can control and lower estrogen levels. So just as a quick recap, because I'm kind of rambling on and getting lost, here's the side effects we look at altogether. And when we add enclomiphene, the minimal suppression will go away because we're increasing testosterone production. When we add Proviron, we're going to lower our SHBG, increasing free testosterone. We're going to lower our estrogen and control it. It's going to help with any lethargy. But we're still going to have these side effects. And then when we add in MK677, it's going to raise our IGF-1, fighting that side effect from enclomiphene. So they're all very synergistic compounds that will help upregulate your body's production of hormones. So pretty much here's the benefits that we're looking at. We're looking at increased muscle mass because of these ones down here, increased recovery, lower SHBG, lower estrogen, higher IGF-1, higher HGH, improved energy, and increased testosterone. You see a lot of people talk about the enclomiphene and MK677 stack, which I probably should have said this earlier on, but that's kind of a useless stack because yes, you're raising it, but you're not making your body a more anabolic environment. But you are when you add in Proviron, because it's going to lower that SHBG, it's going to lower estrogen, and that's going to lead to increased free testosterone, which will actually put your body in that more anabolic environment. So I pretty much think that Proviron was the missing piece, and that's why I made this video, is because that's my stack. That's my endocrine overclocking stack. So this would be the dosing protocol for your lab rat. EOD every other day. I find that that's best, just to give your negative feedback loop a little bit of a break. 677 every day, Proviron every day. And that's the stack.